to be on Zoom or something to let people.
Recording in progress.
I have to accept hands, right?
Well, we can get you set up.
Well,
If
if I
you-
log in right
If
now.
you log in, I think that would
Okay.
be the first step.
Awesome lighting. Look at our pictures.
I could always make that a different slide if that gets distracting.
No, it's vanity.
Brennan looks like he's in a dark room about to develop some film or something over there.
Yeah.
And I'm in the same dark room.
Shade.
Yeah, weird.
Having some other eyes on the screen would be good in case
All right.
my dates are correct.
So I have 9 participants and I'm guessing I need to just hit invite maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Or admit.
I don't see anything that says admit though.
Down at the bottom, it says participants.
Yeah. If I click on that, I have an option to invite or copy invite. Or
So if you just click on the like register the people,
Not-
yeah, and then you go to attendees, and then
So,
there's little dots
yeah,
over here,
just click that.
Yeah. and then promote to panelist.
Do I want to promote all these people to panelists?
No, I assume.
That's not Marcia, these are people.
Oh, okay, I didn't think about. Oh, yeah, that's right. That was the question. Assume. Okay. Oh, okay, so
So I'm gonna say.
Marcia is up there now. And you can promote Marcia to a panelist. Yeah. And I assume people are raising their hands.
Probably
Or
one
comment.
comment on it.
And so when it's their turn, you can click.
So to let them in here, do I just click on,
Allow to talk is probably the quickest way. If someone wants to be seen, you can promote them to panelist. It takes a second. Marcia, did you manage to get in as a, yeah, so there's kind of
so there's no way to just let people in so they're viewers and then.
all these people are viewing right now. So they're hearing us talking about them.
So I'm gonna say allow.
And they're capable of letting us know if they want to speak.
They raise their hand.
Yeah, you can't have your sound on your computer.
It's a classic problem.
Let's mute yourself.
Okay, you're letting us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Linda, I think that's Linda.
Yeah, I'm Linda on a phone number, 603-208-7847.
Could we do something about that volume? That's pretty loud.
Yes.
I thought that, let me start this meeting.
Yeah, that's it.
All right,
We have a bunch of hands.
yeah. Good evening, welcome to a very special meeting of the Norwich Select Board. This is Wednesday, March 15, 2023. My name is Marcia Calloway, currently serving as chair. I am joined remotely, perhaps, maybe, by Mary Layton and Roger Arnold. I'm not entirely sure.
They're not on it.
They're not on. But I am joined in person by Pamela Smith and Priscilla Vincent. The in-person meeting is being held in Tracy Hall multipurpose room, and the remote platform is through Zoom webinar technology. As always, the agenda was distributed via the Norwich listserv and is also available on the town website under the Select Board tab. For those people dialing in by telephone, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 when you are recognized by the chair to speak. We are now in test hybrid meeting, and that's the whole purpose of this meeting. So what we're going to be doing is trying to test drive this technology and make sure that we're getting it correct. My understanding was that people would not be able to just speak, they would have to raise their hand and be recognized.
Yeah, so right now we're in a webinar setting, which automatically puts people in an attendee tab, and the attendees can view the meeting, but they can't be seen or heard until the moderator allows them to talk. If you really need to be seen, there's a way to promote someone to a panelist, and then they can be seen just like anyone else, just like a normal Zoom meeting. And then if you want to bump them back down to attendee, there's a way you can do that as well. Currently, we've allowed a bunch of people to talk, and you could run it that way where you just click allow to talk. If you're going to do that, I would probably suggest you just use a regular Zoom meeting like you have in the past, and then people can talk whenever they want to talk. And that's kind of the big difference between the meetings and the webinar.
So we chose webinar because we thought it would be easier to group people's comments and call on them that way. I suppose we could try it right now with.
So what I'm doing, I'm going through and I'm moving permission to talk just to try it out.
Wait, two people want to talk.
Yeah, well, we'll get to them, but
For those of you who've raised your hands, we know you're there. We're coming.
we have one on the phone here, which we might want to.
I think that's Linda testing the phone capability.
So we could try to let that phone call come through too.
Now, the other thing is, at some point, Mary is gonna join late, so that's a good test to find out if we notice that she's trying to join late.
And that would be a good opportunity to promote someone to a panelist as well. If you have someone that needs to be presenting that is a board member or a specialist of some kind that wants to be seen, promoted to a panelist. Then they're in the meeting just like anybody in a regular meeting.
Okay,
So you're not seeing raised hands here, which I think what we were hoping.
I can see them
We
up
can see them
there,
there.
but they're not
And
there.
then
They're not there
if
now.
Marcia is a panelist as well, can she then click to let them talk, or do I need to?
Yes, we might have to make Marcia a co-host. Let's find out. I can't quite remember if you're a panelist. So if you go to your do you see the attendees tab? Click on more participants. And then you can see all these attendees. And
Okay.
then if you scroll over them, great. So I'll make you a co-host, and then you can also control that. You can have, I believe, as many co-hosts as we want. Sorry, I'm afraid to hear back here. I'm just hitting some buttons.
And she goes, someone new joined, so let's say we get a late arrival, will they show up as someone here that all know that, well, I guess they're all here, right? There's no admission that we're worried about.
If people automatically log in to the attendees.
So we have no waiting room here. This is.
People are just
That's my confusion.
right into the meeting.
Oh, I thought so too.
Yeah, okay, so that's even simpler.
Yeah.
Everybody's already there and it's just a matter.
So when somebody dials in, they just appear.
Yeah.
Nice.
So do we want to try to accept, we have Paul and Manuel, sorry, and then Stuart Richards with a hand up there. Do you want to
Yes,
try that?
yes. I'm going to recognize to speak Paul Manganello.
And then I think you have to hit allow to talk there.
I just know what benefits were.
Go ahead, Paul.
The town work together, so I don't know.
No, they're not.
That's fine. Would you unmute your,
Yeah, the key is unmuted.
Paul, it looks like your
Well,
computer is
Oh,
muted, so you're gonna need to unmute to speak.
off the website, which I should have done.
If you're having trouble with this, I'll call on Stuart Richards. Okay, Stuart Richards, would you like to speak?
Stuart Richards, Norwich. I'm speaking. I don't know if you can hear me.
I hear you.
So the suggestion I would like to make is that the format be similar to usual formats where you've got on the bottom the ability to see other people, to mute and unmute yourself. Each person has the ability to mute and unmute themselves when they're called on, and also you'd be able to see the other people who are logged in to this meeting. At this point, the only thing I can see are the select board members and the advisor who's advised, and the town manager and the advisor who is trying to help sort this thing out. So
So to do that, I understand we'd have to go back to the other format, which is just Zoom.
Yeah, and that's an absolutely valid format. I don't want to suggest you use one or the other. It's totally up to you guys.
it's just that this is more limited. This is more limited. And I can't, I mean, I don't understand why there's a reason not to use the usual format where on the bottom of the screen, participants have the ability to mute and unmute and also have the ability to be seen if they wish to be seen by doing the visual part of it.
Yeah, we were just, frankly, a little nervous about having people in the room and people on the screen. And we thought this might be, more orderly, but we can certainly, would the board like to try the other way? Could we do that like now, or would we have to have a whole
I
new?
think we
Marcia,
gotta have a-
This is the format that the school board uses because they had somebody Zoom bomb them inappropriately.
We did too.
True. And so that Tom Cannon would not use any other format but this one. And we've always used the other one. I don't have a strong opinion either way. But I just wanted you to understand that that's what the school board does and why they do it.
So on the webinar, if somebody really, Stuart, sounds like you really would like to be seen here, there is a way that we can promote him into being one viewable and maybe.
Yeah, so
discuss that.
Stuart, would you be willing to be promoted to a panelist? I guess it'll ask you, so you can say no in case you.
So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna actually Stuart Richards has been promoted to a panelist.
Great.
So can I ask if we promoted, is it possible to promote everyone who signs on as a panelist? So it will function a little bit like the other format.
Sure. I mean, if you were to do that, I would suggest just using the normal Zoom meeting, because that's you're essentially turning it into that meeting, which is a fine way to do it. But yeah.
But is it valid that this way does not allow the Zoom bombing?
No, well, it does if you promote everyone to a panelist, it won't. But
we know who they were. Right? So Stuart Richards Zoom on us, which I'm sure he wouldn't.
well, unless there's somebody that used a fake name or used somebody else's name.
Yeah. So I kind of like the idea we could use webinar, but ask people if they would like to be viewed. They can, request to become a panelist, and we can make them a panelist. And some folks might be fine just being an anonymous box there and not being viewed, right?
Yeah,
Could that work?
But how long does it take to promote individuals if we've got 40 of them?
it would take you a little while. It would probably be a little inconvenient, to be honest.
And we're already long enough in our meetings.
Yeah, so it's like, and then if someone logs in partway through, you have to stop the meeting to find out if they want to be promoted to a panelist. I would think if you want to have a bunch of people as panelists, probably just a normal Zoom meeting would be the way to go.
Not the webinar.
So I'm going to ask the people who are here if they can somehow tell us if they'd like, what idea they like. Does it matter to them if they can be seen or not?
Maybe you do a show of hands.
Yeah, everybody raise your hand as if you wanted to speak, if you approve of being seen as if you were a panelist.
So essentially,
The
the normal, the meeting, yeah, that you had been doing.
So I don't know if it's true, but Stuart, go ahead and raise your hand because you want this.
I'm raising my hand, but I don't know if I can be seen.
No,
Not yet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's.
No, you have to raise your hand,
The hand at the bottom of your screen.
not your physical hand, your hand on the.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
But we did promote Stuart to a panelist, so I'm wondering.
But we
why-
can't see it.
Yeah, so Stuart should be able to.
He hasn't turned his camera on.
Stuart,
He hasn't turned his video on, so that's why we don't see.
I'm unable to turn my video on.
that's interesting.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
That's another part of the webinar
Oh.
aspect.
Oh.
You can't be seen or heard as an attendee.
but Stuart is a panelist now, and so Stuart should be able to be seen. It,
You know,
Right.
because
Right.
Marcia,
When I
think
click on start video, I get a signal that says unable to start video because I'm being screened out.
Oh,
hmm,
Marcia, my personal opinion is that since we've done the Zoom all these last 3 years, and that's what people are used to, maybe that's what we should continue to offer. I just want
One more comment. So if it turns out that we have a problem, I think most everybody has been respectful, as far as I know, all the meetings that I've attended. And if it
we
turns
did have
out,
one Zoom.
Except for the Zoom bar.
We just gotta close down everything.
Yeah, you don't have a problem until you have a problem.
So, may I speak?
You
Madam
may
Chair?
speak.
Interrupted by Stuart. So at my church, we used Zoom for hybrid meetings, and was a lot of trouble with mics, just hearing everybody. But other than that, it was very workable. And that, I think, at its peak might have been maybe 80 or 90 people, maybe half split between the room and the Zoom. So I think it's workable. I don't know, I think they finally fixed the mic aspect of it, and they did install a permanent camera and so forth. But I think it's doable with Zoom.
We still haven't heard from Paul, who is showing up as being muted and then saying, we need to ask you to unmute yourself in order to be heard, which is on the bottom of the screen.
And I click, it says when I hover over his name, it says ask to unmute. So I click on it and nothing happens.
yeah, I'm not sure, Paul should be able to unmute, but I'm also interested in Stuart not being able to be seen. Marcia, can you try starting your video? You're also a panelist. I just want to see. So it seems like something might be wrong on Stuart's end. I'm not totally sure because Marcia is able to turn on her video. And I think we went through the same steps. We just promoted to panelists.
Other than she's here and Stuart's.
Yeah, but Marcia's computer isn't hooked into the system and they do their way wireless.
Yeah, sure.
Paul, are you there?
Yeah, we're not.
Doesn't seem to be.
Do we want to try with Rachel Combs? We want to see if she can talk. Click on Rachel.
Oops. Rachel disappeared down here. Okay, Rachel?
Okay.
Hello?
Hi. Great. So when you just did that, Marcia, the thing showed up and allowed me to unmute myself. When it's not there, there is no option. I think that's going to cause people some stress. I think it is going to be an adjustment if you guys choose to go forward with the webinar format. I was also going to echo that Stuart said, you can't see who's participating. I think it's valuable for those of, I have young kids. I'm probably going to choose a lot of times to be on the Zoom option, because I can't leave them at home alone. So, I think it will be valuable to be able to see who's logged on for us participants at home, because we'll have a visual idea of who's there in the room from the cameras. But it will be nice to see a list of participants, which we could do in the regular Zoom meeting format. And, when I was helping out with the Zoom, Rob and I discussed the Zoom bomb issue. And I think because of the open meeting law, it made it difficult to have any communication with anyone prior to admitting them to kind of verify that they're a real person. But, where we left it was, if somebody does something that there would be somebody monitoring the Zoom to try to end it as soon as possible. Are we still going to have somebody who's dedicated to monitoring the Zoom or not? So that's 2 points.
Yeah, so right now, I think I'm planning to be the monitoring person. Marcia's gonna be running the meeting and also kind of monitoring her for the computer. So that's another answer to the second question. Well, your first, I wasn't sure if there was a question there, but.
The first point was about how it's nice to be able to see who's logged on, just so we have a sense of like how many people are participating in the meeting, et cetera.
Yeah, so that would be a question of, do we continue with the webinar format, or do we go back to the original Zoom format where everybody is kind of there? Yeah.
Well, there seems to be more of an expressed interest to go back to the other format, so.
Which is totally fine.
Okay.
So we could do that for the 22nd, for the meeting next Wednesday.
Sure.
And just, we won't have a chance to test that model, but
We should make a note. It may end up being a different link, so I should set that up right now, and so we have that to the agenda.
Yes.
do we want to try, so we have a phone number calling in here, you want to just try that?
Mhm. Okay. Go ahead, phone number.
Hi
go
there,
ahead.
this is Linda Cook. I wondered if you could see my hand or not. That's great.
Mhm. There you are.
Yeah, that worked.
Ralph? Or did you want to talk?
Sure, anything you want me to do?
No, I thought you raised your hand, so I was,
I did, just because I thought maybe I should see you know I was on.
okay. Jan? Online spirit? Would you like to speak?
Yes, I would actually. Just a couple thoughts on the which format to use. I think it's important to see the person who's talking. So right now, if you could make it so you could see me as I was making a point, I think that's kind of the most important. If I wanted to be seen when talking to the board or the room, then that was possible. So let me.
So Jan, we just tried to promote you to a panelist, which again, will maybe indicate whether Stuart was an anomaly or whether.
No, when I click start video, it says unable to start video because the host has stopped it.
That's interesting. Let me see if there's anything behind the scenes.
We've got two.
Okay, so we now have a problem with the anomaly, so we're working on that.
So that, just to make another point, I think it is valuable to see the person who's speaking. I do see the value in controlling the flow, that the webinar format allows you to control it a little more at your end, and there's some benefit to that. So maybe a suggestion would be start with more control and open it up when you kind of get your feet wet. That would be one way to start. Stay with webinar until you learn how to do it. I just think if you have 40 people who are unmuting and muting and so forth, it gets messy.
True.
But I do think if there is a simple way of allowing video on the speaker, that's important.
So if this works, the webinar where we can allow you to become a panelist while you're speaking, and even if we made people not panelists after they were done, that would accomplish that. And again, we're having this difficulty of it's not working the way I think it was supposed to.
And then you could, in terms of how many people, it is nice to know how many people are there. I can now see that there are 12 participants. I couldn't before I wasn't a panelist, but you could announce that. You could say, we're now starting the meeting and there are 12 participants remotely. And then anyone who speaks and becomes a panelist for video would see the number of participants, and they're across the top now, the way they are on Zoom. And we also, very often, there is a select few number of people who are doing most of the speaking remotely. And so they would be panelists for a certain period of time. It would look just like the Zoom, and then you would retain your control. So those would be my thoughts.
Good ones, thank you.
Yeah, it looks like in behind the scenes, setting up the Zoom meeting, there may be an option that by default was panelists don't have the video on, but that's an option that could be changed.
Okay.
For whatever reason, when it came online, I came up there, right? Yeah, I didn't do anything to make that.
Oh, your video just showed up? Well, that's definitely an anomaly because you're a co-host, so I think that's what I was thinking would allow it to talk, but I'm seeing, but so I'm not sure why. All right, well.
I raised my hand.
Well, we're running into many soul ghosts and whatnot, but this is the setting that both Heartland and Hartford use. And so
This one.
yes, and so I have seen it in practice, and it doesn't mean there won't be things to work out. But again, I'm not here to say you should use one or the other. You can use whatever you want.
It's usually dangerous.
It's your town.
Right. Well, there seems to be anyone who's speaking seems to be giving a consensus that they like the old way.
Sure.
So do you get that too?
Yeah, I think, Jan maybe had the idea that we continue to use this and just do analyst, as a speaker while they're speaking, but I don't really have a strong input either way.
Board, like to stick with Zoom.
To the original.
I'm good with Zoom.
Keep it simple.
Okay, we got a majority on the board, so we'll go Zoom original.
Great, I'll set that up for next week. And on the Zoom bombing element, also, I think luckily that has mostly passed. It's been a while since I've seen a Zoom bomber, but doesn't mean it won't happen again, but seems to have.
You just set a challenge out.
So that's, yeah, make headlines, but hopefully that won't be
What
a huge problem.
All right, thank you very much for that. So absent any other business here, we need to wrap up. So may I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Oh, actually, do we need to do a roll call because Roger isn't here?
You do.
Yes. So Priscilla Vincent, how do you vote?
Adjourn.
Pamela Smith? Yes. Mary?
Yes.
Marcia, yes. Roger, absent. All right, this meeting is adjourned and we are now going to end our webinar. And unfortunately, because we weren't sure what was going to happen, we are doing our next meeting only in person. The following meeting, which is March 22nd, will be hybrid and we will pray.
Now we'll just hold off.
That's good. I think we're all set.
Thank you. Welcome. This is a special meeting of the Norwich Select Board. This is Wednesday, March 15th, 2023. My name is Marcia Calloway. I'm currently serving as chair, and I'm joined by board members this evening in alphabetical order: Roger Arnold, Mary Layton, vice chair, Pamela Smith, and Priscilla Vincent. This in-person meeting is being held in the Tracy Hall multi-purpose room. As always, the agenda and packet materials were distributed via the Norwich listserv and are also available on the town website under the Select Board tab. We didn't put on this an agenda approval. I apologize for that, but we need to still approve the agenda. And I would like to potentially make a slight amendment to the agenda to just simply, after we finish the business of town clerk transition, to discuss quickly the need potentially for a rescission or a special meeting for the rescission of Article 10, which was voted at the last meeting. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as so amended?
So moved.
Mary Layton approved the motion. Do we have a second or made the motion?
I will second.
Seconded by Pam Smith. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. The first or the second item on the agenda today is the town clerk transition and salary with a possible executive session if needed under 1 VSA 313 subparagraph A, subparagraph 3, to discuss the employment of a public officer and or employee. I think we should start this discussion with Brennan discussing the reference materials he's provided for review. And then I expect to hear from our new town clerk, Willie Trayman. And I see that our esteemed town clerk is a former town clerk is here as well, Monday. And if necessary, as I said, we may choose to enter executive session before making our final vote in public with an explanation of the reasons for our final decision as provided under 1 VSA 313A3.
Marcia.
Yes, Brennan, Roger. It's gonna call on Brennan.
What are we, what is the board asked to do in this agenda item?
Well, this is an interesting thing because the town clerk, as we know, is an elected position. And yet the town clerk is paid a salary by the town.
Okay.
And therefore not an employee per se, but still currently subject to the same wage step scale that other employees are subject to. So it's an interesting hybrid situation. And
Okay, I understand part of what we're asked to do here. Okay, thank you.
Bonnie,
Actually, when I was working, when Neil Bolton came on board, I had to sign an agreement in order to fit into the town. It's not uncommon, other towns do this, where we sign in and we agree to follow the personnel policies and things like that, which I endeavored to do. At the same time, I would receive the salary and the benefits as the rest of the employees.
so that's
So there is a form that can be signed, which I signed, I believe. I signed it with Neil and then signed it again with her.
So in 30 plus years, you signed it twice?
Mm-hmm.
And was that a document that was generated by this town or? Is
I
it...
think you can probably find it on the VLCT website.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, other towns do it.
Okay.
It's not me.
It would be helpful to see it. Do you have a copy of it?
No, I don't think I kept a copy.
Okay.
But there may be a copy with Melinda.
Okay. I'm just going to have a quick look, and while I'm doing that, Brennan, would you like to start the discussion?
Sure, so prior to the meeting, I had sent out, just in the hopes that this would be informative for folks in this discussion, the 2022 VLCT Municipal Compensation and Benefits Report, and this is, we published this past fall. So this has different departments and elected officials and municipal employees, and it's basically a self-reported wage of what folks in different municipalities throughout Vermont are earning. And I thought, again, that would be probably helpful here. So we have, I think, a 3-page document. At the end of it, it has an average and a median wage and a number of columns where it explains the population of the town and the number of hours that normally worked. And so it's fairly easy to kind of find like similar towns here that we can compare. The second thing that was sent out, the second one was our fiscal year 23 salary scale, and that has both a annual salary and an hourly rate based on the grades and steps that are being used right now for the town. And then we had some further requests. So today we also sent out the updated financial report as of the end of February for the town clerk's office, which is kind of a budget synopsis there where we are year to date, and also the insurance programs that are offered to town Norwich employees currently. So that is another document. I think it's just one page that has the variable Blue Cross Blue Shield programs that you could enroll in as a town clerk.
So I missed that one. Did you send it or did?
That is, I believe it's in the packet. Materials that planned to send out.
Can send it here. I don't think it went to us. It went straight to everyone else.
It's page 10 in the app.
And the revised.
Has anyone had a chance to look at things and has something to offer while I'm getting up to speed here because I have to find this?
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to.
Go ahead, Pam.
There is a state statute on the salary for town clerks. It's 32 VSA 1224. Town clerks shall receive such salaries as the town may vote to be paid by the respective towns each year. A town may vote a salary in addition to fees retained under section 1401 of this title, or a salary, salary in lieu of fees. If a town votes a salary in lieu of fees, those fees shall be charged and collected by the clerk and at least quarterly turned over to the town treasurer and credited to the town general fund. So as I read this, we have set a salary for our town clerk. The town has voted to approve that budget with that salary. And so I would say that the salary for the town clerk is already established.
Well, if that were true, then the salary wouldn't have changed. Right? Because let me look at that statute. Because, and I'm wondering, I can't find that quickly on the document that Bonnie referred to. You don't have it in your files, do you?
It may be in her personnel file when you ran this.
Usually I could have personnel file and official.
No, I just thought
If
you
she
had
had people filing anyway. If she has some documents.
So they don't put funding and being able to go into her office and get it, that's what she's saying.
Well, you have to file a W-4 and
I-9.
I-9, so you would have a file.
So it was under Title 24?
32.
Oh, 32?
32 VSA 1224.
I have a question for Pam.
Mary?
Pam, is your point that, or that there is sufficient funds? Is your point that, a salary has been set that should be paid out at the same level or what?
As the town may vote, the salary for the town clerk was in the budget passed by the voters.
Exactly.
Therefore, that sets the pay for the town clerk. And we have gone over on other salary line items, so I don't think we should go in violation of a state statute because it might cause a budgetary over expenditure.
I have a follow-up question because I just want to understand this. So the voters voted to support a budget that set the salary at a certain level.
Correct.
So if if a new person is elected and the salary comes in below or equal to that amount, then it sort of aligns with what the voters wanted.
Did I say anything in here when I read this about new town clerks or?
So
But I'm just trying to understand the framework that you're talking
I
about.
actually think, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
So I think we can go back a little. So you're citing 1224, 1224, however lawyers call it, 32 VSA, that one.
Right.
So I think it's more about the salary is set based on the fees that they take in, or else if a vote happens that the town gets, the clerk gets a salary in lieu of just the fees.
That's
So I don't necessarily think, so my question is, do we vote to establish a salary for the clerk? Is this rather than, I don't think the vote for the salary is the yearly budget vote. I believe that we once voted to allow to have the clerk have a salary, and then the town sets the salary based on its wage scale and all the supporting documents that Brennan had provided with us. So I don't interpret the statute to mean when the town voter passes a budget, that's the establishment of the salary. I think we once voted to establish a salary for the clerk in lieu of fees, and because of that, we now set a salary for that position.
It says town clerk shall receive such salaries as the town may vote. We have voted a budget with a salary in that budget.
That's not what I'm saying. I guess my question is, I think it's more about the way that it works for clerks is that they get their salary based on the fees, unless you vote to establish a salary for the clerk, right? Do once have that. So I think I read this as the town can vote to offer the clerk a salary rather than the fees. And I think I'm speculating that we once established this vote, and then we have things like our wage scale and our personnel policies to determine that wage. So I think that's an incorrect reading of the
My
situation.
sense from,
And I think Bonnie probably knows the history of when the town voted to offer her salary.
That, as in any other budget, it's up to that dollar. It doesn't necessarily set, because I have never made in 1 year what my salary is set at. So,
Yes, I guess I'm saying something completely
but I
different.
thought
Does
it was
anyone-
up to that dollar.
Does anybody understand what I'm saying? Because I'm not saying that.
I understand what you're
Okay.
saying.
So I don't think that the town votes on a clerk's salary every year that we pass a budget. The voters once authorized the town to set a salary for the clerk, and then we have mechanisms for that. And so I think we should just move on to the mechanisms as Marcia was allowing Brennan to do, and then go from there.
well, just one thing, I'm worried that there's a missing.
I'm hearing myself echo back.
I don't know, I'm
Anyway.
doing whatever it is too.
Okay.
Okay, what I'm trying to say here is that I think this sounds to me like there's a missing link. Because we don't know what that document says.
It's just an agreement between the town and the clerk so that the clerk can receive benefits such as vacation time, sick time, health insurance.
But that's what I'm saying. Sometimes it's possible, based on other things that have happened, to go around statutes. So I'm just wondering if there's something.
It was more of a protection for the clerk,
Yeah,
not for the town. It was for the clerk to receive those benefits. Obviously in lieu of the fees.
yeah.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Pam.
When was the last time this board voted on a salary for the clerk.
We don't.
Yeah.
What happens is that because she's treated as an employee, apparently, you go up automatically with the step.
Second grade.
And
Or,
so
yeah,
all we hear is, this is,
Right.
this is what the,
like everybody else.
right, this is what she's getting paid. And that's what appears in the budget that's presented from her department to the town manager, which comes to the board. So it's not that the board then turns around and says, we disagree with that, because she's been subject to the step and what do we call it, second grade? Yes. right.
So I don't know if we want to, so to move forward, I think historically, if the clerk position is established as grade 18, I think is presented to us. Normally, when you have someone new in the position, you have your grade 18 as your step A. And I think, you know, this was last established, I believe, in 2013, perhaps, or 2012. So I think then the oral question that I think is for executive session is whether or not it is appropriate to begin a step A for the position of grade 18. So that might be one question, for example, and I assume that's why we're seeing the compensation study from the LCT to provide perspective on that. And I have another whole host of thoughts on what to do about our wage grid, but I'll stop there.
I think one of the things that I have always assumed is that you choose a step based on all of those things that you normally look at when you're hiring a new. A grade, sorry. You choose,
The clerk is grade 18, you may choose the step.
okay,
You know, sorry.
I think I started out right, but I went wrong.
Well, the clerk is set at grade 18,
Right.
that's by precedent.
Right,
And
so
then the
the,
step up
Yes.
so the steps,
every year, would step up, yeah.
one might start out on a step based on basically your, you know, all the things that people look at.
Right.
Experience, education, all that stuff, right?
That's our placement.
Right. Pam,
I have been arguing for the last maybe 6 years that I disagree with the clerk being as grade 18. The clerk is the department head. If we look at the other department heads, they start at grade 21. There's some at 22, 23, but there's not another department head at grade 18. And I was told, well, that's because of, you know, some people have employees that they supervise. Well, our rec director does not have any employees to supervise, and yet the rec director is a grade 21. The town clerk does have assistant town clerk, and so there is someone to supervise. So my thinking is that the town clerk should be at grade 21 at a minimum.
so do we know how I'm gonna write this down. Yeah, it's great. So do we know how the grades are selected?
It was done by the Congress report, and I have a copy of it with me, but that doesn't mean they were right. It just means that's where they put the town clerk. And I disagree with that report.
Please tell me what the Congress report was.
It was, I assume it was the name.
It's a
of the-
study done by Congress Associates, and it's called the Job Classification and Compensation Plan for the Town of Norwich, and it's on our website, September of 2012. And I have always disagreed with the town clerk being at grade 18. And when Pepper was the chair, I stood up and argued for that to be changed. I think there was a step change, but not a grade change after I made my request. But I would advocate that the town clerk should be grade 21, same as the fire chief, the rec director, and I think it's the finance director, but I'm not certain of that.
Can you go back to that report and tell us, was there any rationale for 18?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just a list at the end.
So there's no basis for the decision?
No.
Okay, Mary?
Well, I think the supervisory part is, it carries some weight. But, that Condrey report also was done in 2012. So maybe,
And it was supposed to be updated every 3 to 4 years and it never has been.
right. So that's, it bears looking at.
So,
But I don't know if it helps us resolve what we need to do tonight.
Hang on,
right,
Roger.
so I think in the spirit of what we all agree to is that, if a wage scale was last established in 2012, in the year 2023, I almost said 22, year 2023, it merits 10 years later, plus, which is half a generation, if we assume a generation is 20 years, then yeah, we should look at this and our personnel policies as a major, as something to change, right? And I would imagine, when I would say that the VLCT compensation study is but one tool, I think there should be other tools to address this. But to Mary's point, like that is maybe beyond the scope of the task before us. And I think it might make sense in executive session to question more about step placement in response to the market, not necessarily the job.
Well, let's keep our.
So that's what I'll say to that. So I think we probably all agree that a couple years later, we should look at this.
Right.
And for all our heads, in fact, some more recent hires, introduce if you make recent hires, you risk creating inequities in that wage scale, right? Which is not something we do.
Well, one of the things that I have on for the next agenda is for us to start talking about how we're going to look at job descriptions and all of that.
Yeah, so I think a study like this that was done, it would be an appropriate output for this. But I agree with sort of Mary's last point. We should sort of move on to think about how we're going to solve the matter for this fiscal year.
So, understanding we're going to keep our minds wide open, I think it's time to hear from town clerk or clerks. Would one of you like to speak?
Can I go? Absolutely.
Okay, Lily,
Do I need to stand up or can I stay seated?
the owl needs to see you. If you can come over to the table.
I can sit at the table.
You can see what the outlook's doing now, which is interesting. It's moved and followed you.
Yeah.
So I fully admit that when I ran for clerk,
Can you just say your name for all?
Lily Tryman, town clerk, 236 Main Street, Norwich. When I ran for clerk, I fully read a statute the way you did, looked at the line item in the budget and thought, that's great, that's my salary. The select board knew that a new elected or appointed clerk is coming in, and that's what it's gonna be. And I know that none of you have ever taken a job without knowing your entire compensation package. So we'll start with that. The other 2 points I want to make, in regard to the list from the VLCT that you sent out, it's a voluntary response list, and of the 25 towns around that are most similar to Norwich in population, only 8 of them responded. So it's really sort of a skewed view in terms of what you're going to get. And also in terms of the Condrey report, placing the town clerk at level 18 or grade 18. I believe at that time, the town clerk only supervised a part-time assistant. So now, as you know, I have a full-time assistant to supervise. So what to do? I talked about this with the town clerk in Barry, Carol Dawes, who's widely regarded as the person to go to when you have a question about town clerk stuff. And what she told me was that when she became town clerk as a newbie with no experience 15 years ago, she took a 10% pay cut from the previous town clerk to account for her inexperience. And I would certainly advocate that something like that would be acceptable, and that would indeed bring me to grade 21, step A. And then we could continue our negotiations from there.
Did you happen to talk to anybody about Woodstock?
I have not talked to Woodstock, no.
Does anybody have a question for Lily? Okay, Evan, yes, Robert?
What is the step that Bonnie is leaving us on?
She was on grade 18, step E.
Okay.
Okay, at this stage, if the board feels we need to speak about things in executive session, would someone like to make that motion?
Can I ask, I think the executive session that you cited is not meant for elected officials, but I could be
Not
wrong.
meant for?
Hmm?
What do you mean not?
It's not, I think you need a different statute. I
Well,
think it's to talk about hires for appointments, not.
actually, under the one BSA 313, A3, we are, a public body may not hold an executive session except to consider one or more of the following, and 3 is the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its decision during the open meeting.
But I'm neither being hired nor appointed.
You're not,
Here.
but we also have one VSA 317. I'm losing everything here. Hold on. Let me get the right one. Come back. Jeepers, this is terrible. Go away. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Okay, so one VSA 313 governs executive session, explains what type of business can be discussed in an executive session, and what we're, the problem here is, I suppose that we're talking about employment in general, and so for that bucket, it sort of fits. And then I believe from speaking with counsel, it should be read together with one VSA 317, which explains that under paragraph B, while individual salaries and benefits and salary schedules relating to elected or appointed officials and employees are not exempt from the public, i.e. they must be public. Some records, as is indicated on 1-317A17, says that some records are exempt from public inspection, which means they can be exempt, including town records that are not primarily factual materials, which are preliminary to any determination of policy or action which precede the presentation of a budget. So in that spirit, according to counsel, those same records could be considered in executive session by the board. And the whole purpose is these imponderable things that we're talking about right now to discuss our wage and grade, step and grade scale. I just got to chip off my tongue. And your experience and credentials and all of that, and just come up with something that we then come out and say, this is what we think would be appropriate. Does that make sense?
Am I allowed to counter with?
You're allowed to do anything.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. So with that,
You're asking for a motion?
I'm asking for a motion.
No, it's okay for.
I think it's
Someone
just,
else.
I think it sounds like it's, I think 31383, if I like memorize these at this point, I think that's the appropriate.
313.
I'm happy to make a finding. If
You don't need a finding.
For the public official one.
You don't need that unless it's A1. This is A3.
I see, okay. I only know 813 right now. So it's just a matter of, I move to enter, executive session pursuant to.
1 VSA 313A3.
And to invite the town manager, in with us. All right. Is that right? Is that appropriate?
Yes, that's appropriate to discuss the, basically the appointment or employment of a public employee.
Yeah.
Public employees.
So thanks for the assist.
I'll second.
And maybe have a vote. We need a roll call.
No.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Considering that the town clerk is an elected position and is therefore not under the aegis of the town manager, does that make it inappropriate for the town manager to be part of our executive session?
It's a good question and the board can consider it. I think, the town manager is privy to, well, should be intimately familiar to the extent that these can be, having been here for 3 or 4 months, the wage and scale and the other department heads. And again, this position is both a department head but an elected official. So it's a little bit different, but to the extent that I think what we need to be thinking about is equity, to the extent that's a big word, right? And also what we're going to be thinking about in the future, and the fact that we have an old report and a very different person coming in for town clerk who doesn't have experience, but obviously has other attributes in education. I mean, there's just a lot of things to be discussed.
So
And so I think it would be helpful to have the person who's the manager, but it's arguable.
Right, so I made the motion with Marcia's help, on the basis that he had permission to share with us, but if Brian had shared the extent of that information, I guess
He's already
discuss it,
shared
but I think I will rhetorically note that this is precisely like one of the tensions that we have to work out, right? We have like an elected officer that is subject to a wage scale and a set of personnel policies of which a manager would have great expertise to advise over, and we're immediately half the room is like, oh no, that's not appropriate. So I do think we need some reconciliation around that, right? But so that's rhetorical, and I'm happy to amend the motion if to disinvite if.
Well, you didn't invite him yet.
I did invite him.
Oh, okay. Priscilla, you were.
I'm not trying to suggest
Yes.
that it's inappropriate for the town manager to be here. I'm just sort of, because agreed, he has knowledge that perhaps we don't have, but I want to be very clear that the town clerk does not report to the town manager. In that sense, he doesn't really have, he can provide information, but he doesn't have a say
Exactly.
over what we decide.
That's true. Pam.
What information do you think the town manager can bring to the executive session that he hasn't already presented to us?
That I don't know.
I have
Roger. Okay, but Mary, you were next. Mary?
I'm just thinking,
Oh, you had your hand up, so I thought you were ready.
well, okay, I had my hand up for a different
Okay.
reason, and this might not be for tonight, but the agreement that Bonnie signed twice with the town manager, just wondering, is that a little carve out of town manager authority? Like what effect does that have on the relationship? Is it a waiver?
It's a very good question.
So, and that might not be for tonight either, but I think it might be pretty important to understanding how this really should work.
Wait a minute.
So,
Do you have follow-up from Roger Holt?
yeah,
Do we know that Lily is willing to sign that document?
Well, she didn't.
I haven't seen the document, so I can't tell you one way or another.
So that's all hypothetical.
here's the thing. I think when you receive a salary and health insurance, you agree to abide by the personnel policies. The personnel policies are the town's personnel policies. We're a town manager form of government. The town manager oversees these personnel policies. So if the clerk is found to violate the personnel policies by the town manager, then it's subject to the terms of personnel policies. So it's in that way that it is a wonderful hybrid of elected duties accountable to the voter, but a clerk who is accountable to personnel policies, because if you get a salary and health insurance for that.
Well,
So that is the world.
I'm just gonna say that,
And I'm happy that is a total another agenda item, which we should discuss, because we're seeing the tension.
right.
So I didn't mean to.
But I think it's an interesting point, and that's the whole problem. this person was elected, we can't dismiss this person. No matter, I mean, suppose if you burn down the place, the feds would come and we would.
I recognize that's an offense for which I can be terminated.
Well, maybe not even by us, but somebody else.
The voters.
You probably just don't get a salary. It's not- Subject to your fees.
Mary, now do you have,
Well, I think panels.
oh, sorry.
I was gonna make the point you made. If she violates the personnel policies, what is the recourse? Because she's elected, we can't throw her out. Only the voters can do that.
She gets no coffee.
She gets this, you get this salary, like.
Just thinking and how this was put together for Bonnie at the grade 18, which I believe came out of the Coggy report. All of the Coggy report was the town manager's,
Which is why I rated so low at that time.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's also, it's even more kind of creepy because in that case, did the town manager set your salary?
It
Or that grade?
that one.
So, I mean,
And as you can see, there is not a whole lot of respect still for the clerk's office with correspondence with the finance office in respect to the assistant. So, you've got to look at this as a whole. I mean, it was at their recommendation that the assistant was made into a part-time position, where I think Lily recognizes the need for it not to be part-time, which is a need that I recognize, but yet your finance director could not recognize that or reconcile that.
But just on that point, it was voted, so it
And
can't
that's
change.
why it didn't upset me, it was about the town.
So we have a motion on the table,
Let's try and keep our.
which I contributed, so I contributed to getting us off the fact that we have a motion on the table as well, but we do have a motion on the table, so I don't know if you want to vote. I'm happy to call the question.
Not yet, we have one person in the audience. Cheryl, would you come to the owl?
And Cheryl Lindbergh,
Yeah,
speak right up.
and nobody, well, the owl likes to see you.
No, I just have a brief, well, Bonnie didn't have to get up to the owl.
No, that's the owl can see, I'm sorry.
Oh, the owl needs to see me?
Yeah.
The house
It's
sees
easy,
you,
we're
you're on
not-
the screen, you're seen,
Well,
you're seen by all of us.
Okay, Cheryl Lindbergh, it strikes me more relevant to the board to invite Lily into your executive session. If you're gonna discuss with her this
And the question.
compensation, that's the person I think should be in the executive session. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger.
So, first of all, there's nothing that would stop us from coming out of executive session and then going back into executive session. So I think I would like the opportunity to discuss, the information presented to date with this group first. And then, I do think it's appropriate, to maintain that it's a discussion and not just a decision. So we should discuss. And then we could come back out and we could invite someone new into the executive session, or we could just have that conversation in public, how we want to do it. So I think so we can come out of it with not having made a decision and then, do it again and then make our decision. And so I'll just say that rhetorically.
Well, we have to make a final decision. So we have to say something, we'll use this, that's what the statute says. So, Pam.
Is the purpose of this to negotiate with the town clerk a salary that both sides feel comfortable with? And if so, why wouldn't we invite the town clerk into that negotiation rather than the town manager? We're not negotiating his salary, we're negotiating her salary.
I'm not sure it's a negotiation exactly.
Yeah.
I'm thinking what we're trying to do is get our heads around something that this is the tip of the iceberg as far as I can see, because as Roger said, we have to look at the whole body of work here in Norwich, right? And that I think is going to play into our personnel policies and everything that we are about to do and hire something for an HR structure or implement it. So we have, all of this is of a piece. So I think at this moment, we've got a situation where, you know, we just heard something new that's strange, these two things that Bonnie's had to sign. I think we need to get our heads around it and not think of this as a negotiation at this point, but to try and figure out what we think is correct. That's my opinion.
Marcia, I didn't have to sign, I agreed to sign because it protected me.
Protected you because you had benefits?
Because I had benefits.
So in other words, you weren't going to get benefits unless you signed?
You have the ability not to give benefits, that's correct.
That's what I said. So if they agree not to abide by the policies, you lose the privilege, what it awards. So I interpret that to not be just benefits, but the salary itself.
Yeah.
You can be an elected officer and not get, you know, you can be determined by fees.
But what we've got right now
Starts
is
getting on dogs.
elected official sitting here who gets a stipend, an elected official who gets a salary, and elected officials up here who get a W-2 as if we were employees. It's rather it's all over the board, and we need to get our head around that. Mary.
If we had a settled long-term town manager, I'm wondering if the town manager would be setting the salary despite the precedent. No,
I don't think that was the case.
but didn't that happen for you, Bonnie?
It did at one point in time, and then the wonderful Connery report happened. And that kind of took control of it.
And the voters voted Bonnie to approve that, correct?
I'm worried that people can't hear you.
Oh.
Join me.
Yeah.
You want to vote your
I
salary?
like being on.
The Apple sees you anyway. It's just, we have a better, anyway.
So, I'm sorry, I interrupted you because I wanted people to hear you. Did you have more?
No.
Okay, so, this report bothers me and what you signed bothers me, and I just want to find out more about those.
It shouldn't bother you. I mean,
It gave her health insurance. It's a good thing.
I wouldn't look at it as a bad thing.
Well,
I had a choice.
I'll make up my own mind when I see the thing.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair.
Lily,
Can I add one more thing to bother you?
yes.
Which is that the personnel policy was written in 2009 and it doesn't have the correct health insurance information on it, so.
That's bothering me a lot.
Okay,
We're
good.
going.
Just so you're bothered.
Really, I have a basket of bottles. It's huge.
I have a list.
Pam,
Would it be possible for the town manager to go and look in the town manager's office to see if there is a file for Bonnie and see if that document is in there? Is that something that we could try to retrieve now?
I think to my mind, it doesn't bear on tonight's decision because that would be sort of a downstream sort of thing, which I think we should look into. Do you agree?
I agree. This is the first we've heard of the documents tonight.
I might be able to find it in my basket if you didn't already read it out.
I have not read anything that wasn't from the 1990s. Which I don't even think that.
Another question about that, please. A question about that agreement. That is it necessary for Lily to sign that?
So that's what I'm saying.
So
Yes.
I believe if you'll, while you're in executive session, I will look up, there is something in the town clerk's handbook about eligibility for benefits. And I don't know, I believe if I work more than a certain number of hours a week and this town is a member of the Vermont
League of
Yes.
Cities and Towns.
then I'm legally allowed or
That's what I was
benefits.
thinking.
But I can look that up and
More than 25 hours every.
20, yeah.
More than 25 hours every month.
The latest clerk's handbook was published in 2000, so we're all
Yeah.
things that are outdated.
Yeah, same with the treasurers.
All right, well, we have a question on the table. Shall we vote it? All in favor?
Okay.
Okay, we'll go into executive session. So we will depart into the lister's office.
I would ask the director record me as a note, please.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to do a roll call. Priscilla.
Abstain, I'm confused.
Fair enough. Mary, no. No. Roger, yes. Mary?
Yes.
Martha, yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will go next door and be back directly.
When we're on Zoom, are you mute?
Are we recording?
Please.
I mute my.
I was getting text messages from Amy saying they were having trouble hearing us.
We're gonna go on mute later than us.
Going into public session, please.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ann Smith. All in favor? Unanimous. We're back in public session at 8:13 PM. Do we have a motion based on the discussion in executive session?
I'll make a motion. I move to establish the grade and step for the town clerk at 18K, which is a salary of 68,697.75.
Second that.
Seconded by Mary. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion. We have voted, but I'm sorry, discussion. Okay. I'm sorry, my brain, Omar.
Sorry, we just had this conversation in the past that you are expected when you come out of executive session, not just to vote, but to explain the reasoning and.
That's next.
I think Pam's getting to that.
Pam, would you explain the?
I had originally said that I thought 21 was a good grade for the town clerk. However, in our discussion, I realized that we are somewhat limited by the salary and wage structure that we've inherited. And that it's something that is outdated, it needs to be redone. The study is 11 years old, and we're just making the decision to work within what we have, and then at some future date, this will be looked at again, and maybe those changes will come out of that instead.
I think we had a second motion and
Do we
sort
have a
of
second motion
support.
that came out of this session? Yeah.
I believe the motion that we discussed was that this board would undertake, I make the motion that this board undertake a wage and salary study of all of the positions within the town. And we did not agree on a completion date, but, it's something that we feel that needs to be done as quickly as possible.
So the motion is to undertake a wage and salary study of all positions within the town as soon as possible.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Priscilla?
It seems very arbitrary that the town clerk is 18 and other people are 21. And some of us are not comfortable or happy about that. And we feel it would be far more respectful of an elected official and also recognition of what the town clerk does. Not to have that disparity, but we're trying to work within what we have now, and we feel there's sense of urgency to look at this whole outdated structure and redo it. So no offense is intended at all.
So in fact, the salary is higher than what 21A would be. Yes, really.
Thank you, and I think that's fair, and I'm glad we are taking the wage and look at the second rated step increases. But that's a fair.
And it does say in the study that this would be reviewed every 3 to 4 years, and yet 11 years have gone by without a review, so it's time.
And I think we all agree that all of the changes that we want to see happen are going to be, this is part and parcel of that. And we just can't move forward without all of these things being done at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, and, did we have any other motions to be made?
Well, I think we didn't vote on that.
We did, oh, sorry. I call the question, all in favor? Passed unanimously. And now, do we have a third motion?
I'm sorry.
Roger, seconded.
Well, I think so I think we talked about a potential issue. I think we wanted to hear more. The second part of this agenda item was to learn more about the transition, right? And so we wanted to hear from Bonnie about what transition. Then now they're off you.
Oh, she's talking to that, but the hours.
So can you hear me now? Because it just got unmuted.
Can someone who's listening text someone on the board and tell us that you can hear or not?
Okay. I think we just unmuted. So it wasn't on work.
Just to be clear, it was unmuted. I'm controlling that, so.
Yeah.
It's unmuting.
You should forgot to unmute. So now we unmuted, and so now they can hear me. So
I put my life on hold in hopes to having something before this. And no one has reached out to me in any way. And I'm either gonna take my life all off hold and establish things immediately, or I'm gonna abide by for time. I'm more than willing to help Lily.
So I think, Marshall, what I imagine, and tell me if this makes, and if all discuss if this makes sense, I imagine that we would, have you, as a consultant at your current wage, but hourly, and that you would come in for a number of hours that were determined by the current clerk and the town manager. We would seek his advice because of budgetary reasons. And that you would tell us how many hours per week, and then we would write potentially like a letter of agreement that just said, you know, you will get this, basically you would get your current rate at an hourly rate for this number of hours, and you would perform, you know, these services generally. We wouldn't have, I don't think we're imagining sort of a complete scope of work, but rather just speaking about, you know, the duties generally that you would be advising them in. So that's what I envision. And so I guess what I might want to hear from this conversation is if that makes sense, and then how many hours and what work schedule would you both advise?
So
I'll put that question.
Yeah, I think the logical way to approach this is probably that the two clerks discuss. And then Lily can say to Brennan, this is what we feel we need. And then Brennan writes that up, and he's gonna have to potentially come back to us because simply we're gonna have to, you know, move some monies around. That's all. And so it's a matter of what you two decide is needed and what Bonnie decides she can do. And then bring it to Brennan and then we'll move the money. Does that sound reasonable?
I guess so, but I'd like to see some numbers,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not speaking now. And I tried to bring the conversation up regardless of who became clerk,
Mhm.
and no one was willing to talk about it then. And, you know, here I am now at a point where I have to make decisions. And there's been no discussion, so, you know, at this point, I'm a little frustrated and I'm a little upset at the lack of communication that seems to plague us.
Mhm.
Not having to have any conversation with anybody. And I feel expected to keep my life on hold.
Well, I hope not, that shouldn't happen, but so this should be ironed out as soon as possible.
And also the next time, have a way to reach out to people that they may be appearing before the board. I had no notification whatsoever that this meeting was taking place until I actually spoke with Lily within the last couple of days. So
I'll take the blame for that.
well, I'm not thinking about myself, but also other people that this happens to. There's no extension of courtesies made to other people.
We will try to do better.
Thank you.
Lily.
If I can move this forward into Brian's domain, Bonnie and I had discussed her coming in Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 to 2. So making 8 hours a week. You can hear me, I'm real loud. I can. Sorry, Charlotte and everybody else out there. Bonnie and I had discussed her coming in Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 to 2, so it'd be the equivalent of 8 hours a week. So if you wanna think on that, chew on that, and come back to me tomorrow, I can bring it to Bonnie.
So perhaps I can make a motion, and then maybe kind of maybe she could discuss in the discussion portion of that.
I was just gonna say, you know, we're only a week into this new arrangement and we quite honestly didn't know how the vote was gonna turn out, but, and I didn't understand
it either.
Right.
Because I knew a vote.
But we didn't understand that was your thinking, that you would be available to Judy and we should be reaching out to you and, you know, it communication is a two-way street.
And this is a special meeting, like we're here.
And yeah, we're here on an off night to try to accommodate everybody.
So Roger, do you have a motion?
Sure, so assuming that what Lily just said is agreeable with Bonnie.
I would say up to 20 hours just in case.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
may I add one thing real quick, which I had a pre-booked vacation in April. So I'm gonna be out for some days and it may be very useful for you guys to have Bonnie available in that time.
We do have a highly trained assistant.
You do have a highly trained assistant, but Fielding disabled her computer access to some of the more vital systems. So she's unable to do some of the things that she is trained to do.
Well, then let's get that fixed.
You get that right.
I had mentioned that before.
Yeah.
So.
And I actually I talk often about the relationship between elected officials and hired officials as something that needs to work out. I don't think it's fair to characterize an employee who's not here with us. I don't think they characterize their actions.
Well, she may have just been saying what happened.
I'm not characterizing her actions in any way. Yeah. She's doing a great job. I would have been sunk this last week without her. But she has told me there are certain records she can't access because another employee withdrew access. So maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but she no longer has access.
That's another thing that's on my list, to make sure that we have a really good IT protocol, because that's sort of bedrock in this day and age.
Because I don't think that most of the clerk's functions, I think there's only one interface that the finance department has that would interact with the town clerk's office. So I would say maybe perhaps that was disabled, but I think it's unfair to characterize all of the clerk's functions as being disabled.
She didn't say that. Okay, so moving on. You've made your motion.
I have it.
It's not a motion.
I was trying.
Yeah. Are you ready?
I would like to be.
Please do.
Okay. So I move to authorize the town manager to write a letter of agreement for up to 20 hours of her work per week to Bonnie Monday for the purposes of assisting Lily.
At the rate of,
At her currently hourly rate,
at her former,
at her most recent hourly rate.
does anyone need that read again? No?
I wouldn't mind it, something tough.
Did you get that? Do we have to read that?
Sure. Well, I didn't want it all words there.
I'll help you.
So option was to authorize town manager to write a letter of agreement for up to 20 hours a week for purposes of transition and solid paraphrasing.
I'm happy to accept that paraphrasing.
For most recent hourly rate. That Bonnie.
Yes, for Bonnie Monday to assist Lily Tryman. I got her this time.
So that's part of the motion that we're reading.
To for the purpose of this, for Bonnie Monday to assist Lily Tryman at her most recent hourly rate.
So after you had for the purpose of.
Yeah, but I think we're good.
I will second that motion.
Seconded by Pam Smith. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. And thank you to all of you. This has been a tough transition for everybody. We will get through it. All right. Now, pursuant to our adjustment of the agenda, and while Lily is still here. Article 10 was approved by the voters. It was put on the warrant in error. And so therefore, we have a couple of things to consider. One is that there is an argument that the vote was to put the ARPA monies, not specifying the amount, in the reserve fund. And I understand that they are not in a reserve fund, and now they are in a.
We've in a settled revenue fund, which is where they.
And no amount was voted. Conversely, to make it clean, we could have a special election or a special meeting. And ironically, a special meeting is going to be required for the school system because there is a need to vote for the school board members. Therefore, if we are timely, which I believe according to Lily is getting our notification that we are scheduling a special meeting by the 22nd of March.
Going on that deadline,
We're not scheduling it, but we're warning it, I think it's warning it.
warning it by that date, it's
Yeah.
not on that date.
No.
And it has to be within 60 days, I believe, of the vote.
That's interesting because I read one statute that says simply that something stays in effect until it's voted again. So, there is no mechanism that I can find for select board to say something was voted on the warrant, we don't like it, so we're going to call a special meeting to get rid of it. Townspeople can come up with a petition after something, and that's where I think that 60 days is pertinent.
That's try to stay in concert with the school.
Right.
So it only has to happen once.
Yes.
And only one ballot needs to be prepared.
That was the idea. So what I'm saying to the board is, it seems to me we may have two options. We could take the conservative approach, jump on the opportunity to get it on this warrant for the school board and cleanly wipe this away. Or two, rely on the fact that there was a vote, but since there is a vote, does that obligate us to put ARPA money into a reserve fund? Roger.
So you're interested in that. because it was written to establish a reserve fund. There's several reserve funds that have been established by voters that, we cleaned them up a little bit last year when we did some transfers, right? We got rid of the pool fund, for example.
Right.
But I would argue that, looking closely at those reserve funds and asking the voters to make transfers or to eliminate some is like a bigger job or something we can do all at once. So because we didn't ask the voters to move ARPA money to this reserve fund, I feel comfortable that this is not a pressing issue and that we should just look at it when we have to rescind some other things. So I don't know if we need legal counsel to feel confident about that or what have you, but they don't speak, particularly since I don't feel like this is a pressing issue for us.
I'm looking at the language about what we want. Just
Because we didn't fund the reserve fund.
it says
We established it.
establish.
And we established a couple of reserve funds that, last year when we did the reserve fund, we asked them to also then move and then put monies into it.
Right, because we wanted to establish.
So now the voters established a reserve fund, which may not be the appropriate thing to have done, although I haven't ever seen any documentation on that.
Oh, I'm sorry, send it to you.
It's okay. So I would just leave it as the error that it is and address it when we're ready to look at our reserve funds, which I think should really probably do anyway. So I don't feel the need to rush.
And
That's it.
if the school board is going to hold an election anyway, we have a couple of town offices, elected officials that need to be filled, and I understand that there may be some candidates for those positions. If we're going to coordinate with the school, why wouldn't you just put an article on there saying, shall the voters vote to eliminate the ARPA reserve fund? And just, instead of saying authorize it, eliminate it, and we're done.
What candidates are you thinking of?
There's a trustee of public funds position that is open and a cemetery commission.
But is anybody interested in those positions?
I will be calling for a trustee.
It's an opportunity.
Okay. Lily, what's the deadline?
My only concern with that is we would need to go through the petitioning process and need time for that, and I believe from what I've read, we need to have ballots 46 days before the election. So
Do we know when your election is?
the school board is waiting for you. Because they're hoping, I'm waiting for you because I was hoping to combine these lovely special elections that you've given me into.
Does that mean the school board didn't send the?
Pam, no school board, you can appoint and they can run it. So,
They do a write-in campaign.
well, they can, yeah. But Hooter got the primary vote for cemetery.
Right, I'm just submitting an alternative to petition.
But then you putting it back to the 47 days.
So
You're crunching, you're shrinking.
So my report, I think Martha was asking us what it was about. I gave my answer, I want to start everything else.
So Pam's in favor of putting it on a special meeting.
It just makes sense to try to combine it if we can.
Patricia? Yes?
Priscilla. Keep calling it Patricia.
I will say this, something about my name starts with P, ends with an A. I answer to Priscilla, Patricia, and sometimes Phyllis. I know you need me on it, but that's sometimes.
Sarah Pollyanna.
No. We have to have a special election for the school board people anyway. Let's put this ARPA thing on and just clean it up.
Mary?
I like the idea of cleaning it up. I wonder if the voters will understand the second time more than they did the first time. I'm kind of a little,
Well, that just technology will be, do you want to get rid of it?
well, I like the idea of making it clean and having the people vote on it. We did talk about trying to educate them, which we did do. And, you know, they're just thinking this is proper, we'll make a reserve fund, that's not proper, we're gonna do that. So how are we gonna educate? And it makes me nervous just to leave it, but it might be, okay, what if they vote for it again? Or is it gonna depend on how, you know what I mean? I just wanna make sure it works, so that the voters make the decision in an informed way. They did not have it the first time, and we're dying jumping to stop. Okay, I'm done. You are. No, I'm not.
Well, no, because so could you inspire comment?
Okay.
So I think you're right. I think it is a little, I think the only thing that we have managed to inspire about an ARPA discussion is a creation of a fund that we now have to rescind. I think it's far given, if it's truly the case that there's no obligation to fund the ARPA monies, to move the ARPA monies into the reserve fund based on the vote, that there's no obligation to do that. I think we're better off rescinding it after we have a communication about what we would like to use the money for. And then we can say like, hey, everyone, here's an inspiring moment. You know, this is what we're going to do with our windfall money. Also get rid of that reserve fund for it. So I think, so if it was truly just a bad practice and there isn't like that movement of funds, then I think to your point about what's generous to the voters, let's like come back to them with this question when we have something for them to actually chew on, right? Something inspirational other than like some technical, you know, financial accounting thing.
Priscilla? There was absolutely no attempt to bring this up before the voters, as far as I can see. None. There was nothing, I don't think there was anything on the listserv. There was hardly anything said even at the town meeting, which not everybody goes into. It wasn't reiterated at select board meetings. And the electorate seems to be charmingly trustful. I mean, they figure if stuff is on the warrant article, it's been thought out, it's been put there for good reasons, and maybe they don't really know anything about it, but they figure if I don't know, it's probably a good thing, and they usually vote them in. So,
Well, to Roger's point, I'm thinking that, if we wait, then that means coming up with a special meeting, which is expensive. And we have a meeting here that's we can climb onto. And I'm thinking that the language of the warrant article could be clear enough to say, should we correct the problem of having voted for ARPA reserve fund by rescinding, or I don't know, maybe do we have to vote to put it into a, what is it, the one that
It's already in the special revenue, special revenue.
But I don't know if you have to vote for that.
You don't vote that anyway.
No,
Yeah.
you worded it in such a way that they vote yes because they love to vote yes. And so you say, shall we eliminate this special, what do we call it? Reserve fund, and leave the funds in the special revenue fund, and they'll say yes.
But the funds are in the general ledger
But
now
then-
because they haven't been moved, because there's no directive to have moved it.
well, apparently they already are there. That's what Brendan said.
So
Yes.
they're all, if I understand it correctly, there's multiple reserve funds and they are in the appropriate reserve fund that the federal government is allowing.
Okay.
I'm sure we're gonna confuse the voters even more by making it more wordy. And just vote to rescind the article as it was written, yes or no.
Okay.
That's all you have to do. Straightforward, with no flourishness.
And Cheryl, is that, you were just gonna concur with that?
I was going to add something, okay? So in our fund accounting software, you can open funds other than reserve funds and categorize them appropriately. It is not a reserve fund. It cannot go into a reserve fund. The government said it can't until it's been used and spent. So it is, I call it a grant. You can call it special revenue. What I just went through in a class for fund accounting, they said it's a grant from the federal government. It's a grant fund. Whatever, it should not be moved from that fund type until we've spent the money. We then have some surplus funds left and other expenditures we didn't make because we used the ARPA funds instead. And now there's a surplus to place into a reserve fund. That's the steps. That's what the government instructed the municipalities to do. Not making it up. I've talked to officials at VLCT. I've talked with our auditors. It's their words as well. So.
And I can send you that great sheet. Yeah, I just want us to word it in such a way that people don't think that we're giving back the money that it's still.
Right, yeah.
So may I suggest this? First, Lily, you have a comment?
I believe there is language that you need to use to rescind it. You can't just put it back out there. You also need to consider that, so reading from the statute, a vote to reconsider or rescind shall not be effective unless the number of votes cast in favor of rescission exceeds 90% of the number of votes cast for the prevailing side of the original meeting. I don't anticipate great turnout for this special election, so I mean, I can vote to rescind, but if we don't get more than 90% of the votes in favor, then it doesn't go through.
I think that's really smart. And I think also these are not contested school board elections, right? They are.
I'm still up here, well, we can't just, they're not contested.
They're not.
But according to the Secretary of State, we can't just.
So there's, I have to tell you, they're not contested, that's like a little incentive for a special vote, because. So I would say, I think more of a reason to wait to town meeting day in March.
To wait on it.
Well, you can't wait for a rescission, but you could do something.
No, I mean the rescission for, given the possibility of low voter turnout, given that we need to have a certain number of votes in order to actually rescind it, and given that we haven't actually funded this reserve fund, it may make sense, and given Mary's good, and I think a few others, good point about voter education, I think we should wait until March and then like talk to Priscilla's point, talk a lot about it, right? And I think we do need to start thinking about that ARPA surplus in our budgeting, because the intention is that we will create a surplus.
So I'm just thinking, rescission means something specific. It means that something has just been voted and you're going to rescind. Versus you've got the language in the statutes that says basically something stays in place until we vote otherwise. That's different from rescission, right? So what Roger's talking about is not a rescission vote, it's a different vote.
Indeed, yes.
So the question becomes, do we want to do a rescission now, which can only be done soon, or do we want to do, just wait, let it sit on the so-called books and do a new vote next year? Lily.
That same statute also says that after the passing of these 8 months from the date of any such reconsideration or number up to it doesn't matter.
Keep reading.
Okay, after the passing of these 8 months from the date of any such reconsideration or rescission, the same or similar question may be newly submitted for consideration. So 8 months. Maybe you could, so that was just the vote in March
Would next meeting.
That would be good.
Yeah. However, March the first was to not really do anything, and you were given permission to establish this fund. Doesn't mean that you will establish it. You've been permission has been given if you want to establish it, The board can choose not to establish the fund. Can we go against the voters? Can we just establish the fund and say it's, fund vote 54, but it has no money in it?
Well, so
Initially, you had talked when you're letting it go. One of the first offerings that you had mentioned earlier tonight, Marcia, was to just kind of let it sit in the fund that
that the town currently has in. And not putting it into a reserve fund.
Right.
Yeah, I think we don't have, I think this reserve fund exists, that has no money in it, we're not going to move any money into it. I think, I really like Mary's contribution of, and Priscilla's, of voter education, and I guess this transparency, but also, but finally, I have a mission for transparency in this case, which is, we have a lot of education and conversations around ARPA, we have a lot of conversations that need to happen around our funds, and including how many reserve funds that we have that are established that are, should be rescinded. So I think it's actually to wait presents like better opportunities to actually call them through on them. So, and then also I'm also gonna vote no or abstain because I didn't actually see the material, which is really fun.
Well, actually, my point is to bring it up tonight and then
Take action.
take action on the 22nd, but give people time to think about it.
Okay.
So when, do we have an election in November for anything?
Nothing.
Of course not.
Next year.
When do we have our primary? Is that
Next town meeting,
no,
the presidential primary will be, I believe,
Yes.
in next town meeting.
So I'm gonna ask.
Presidential primary.
was that just around us?
No, not the presidential, it's held with town meeting, and you also have the town vote, and you'll have the draft and vote. You have 3 separate elections going on that day.
Oh, Brendan, can I do your
August is the state primary, November is the general election.
Okay, and there is an August primary, but it's state. Okay, Brendan,
But that's
can you
next
give us
year.
your opinion?
I guess I would probably agree that we're gonna be reclassifying the number of funds shortly, not in the time it'll take to get to this next ballot. We should probably do that in conjunction, and I think the way this is worded, it's not really doing any damage right now. It's just, an authorization to do something without a funding, decree.
Okay, so do we want to take any action tonight? Do we want to just put this on the agenda? You saw I put it on as a possible, or you may have seen it, for the March 22nd. Yes, March 22nd meeting. Or do you want to just say we're happy and not do anything further? Mary,
I'd like to just let it sit.
another March 22nd further.
I'd like to not have this part of the subject. And I like the idea of considering it when you're weeding out other reserve funds that no longer have a purpose.
Yeah, I like that too.
Could it be, could it be a question we ask the auditors, or do they not? Do that not?
I don't know if they can opine on this one. And do you have, Priscilla, do you have a feeling one way or the other on this? Because we don't have to take any action.
As long as we don't get in trouble by doing nothing, nothing goes it, then.
Okay, Priscilla, yeah.
I think that there's no mandate in that article that says we will move $1,055,000 into this fund once it is created. So there's no mandate to move money. We could show an ARPA reserve fund on our books, but it has no money in it. We would fulfill the vote of the voters to create the fund, but there's no mandate to put anything in it. And so I think we've met our obligation at that point. And if this board is willing to do the appointments of the trustee and the cemetery commission, if there's somebody that steps forward for those positions for a one-year appointment, then there would be no reason for us to enjoin with the school board to be on this special ballot.
You're not suggesting a second special meeting? Just,
I'm saying that if we're doing appointments for the 2 openings that we have for elected officials, and we're not going to do anything on this ARPA article other than put some words on a piece of paper, but no money in it, there's no reason for us to participate with the school in getting that election.
Okay.
Yeah, and to Bonnie's point about communication earlier, I think we should just sort of agree that we're going to allow the clerk to work with the school on their special election and maybe take ourselves out of the equation. I don't know if that's appropriate for this agenda item, but if you think we should communicate that formally.
That would, if you choose to not hold a rescission vote, you shall communicate that sooner rather than later, so that I can begin preparing the school district.
Do we want to have a motion, or do we want to just say that we're not doing anything and instruct them?
But we can later decide to do something now before. I'll never speak to you again. I think she's gonna work out just great.
Just remember, we live in our house.
Just keep in mind, Brennan, especially you, that Lily is gonna need space for people to vote in that. So, I don't know that turnout is gonna be tremendous, but she's gonna have either the gym or down here available for voting. And it probably will conflict with the rec programs. So, unfortunately, election process is a precedence over that. So it is a space that's gonna need to be made available as well.
You should.
All right, so what would the board like to do? Just say we've discussed it enough, make a motion. I could also keep it on the draft agenda for the 22nd.
Please take off.
Yeah. Does anyone want to feel the need for a motion, or are we all set? We're all set. All right, so you Lily, understand that you can go forward with your special election for the town.
In my capacity as a school board member, thank you. I will let Tom handle he would be.
Great, so we're happy to make people happy. Now, if there is no other business, I would entertain a motion to public comment. Oh, sorry, thank you. Public comments. Would anyone of the public that is sitting here in our building like to make a public comment?
Welcome back. Is it gonna work?
Well, we'll see. This isn't actually live right now, other than CATV, so we'll see.
But didn't you warn next week's meeting hybrid here?
It hasn't been sent out yet, but yes, it's going to be more hybrid here. Yes, Lily?
Can I ask to add an agenda item for next week?
Yes.
Which is a liquor license.
Oh, yes.
For carpenter meeting should be very quick.
So what we do is you give what you collect to Brennan's office, and they tell me it's got to be on the agenda, and one of us puts it on the agenda.
It all has to be on the agenda, show how the writers use
On these ways going with.
Okay. Our agenda is getting longer. Yes, Ralph.
Ordinance is possible, but still some chairs in the police station.
Maybe this is an emergency. We have to spend some money on it. We'll take that under advisement.
Okay.
Oh, I would take a motion to adjourn. So moved by Mary, seconded by Pam. We are adjourned at, I think it is 8:55. Thank you very much.
I think we voted, but I'm
sorry.
Over and balance tomorrow.